My dear friends, we are in the most holy of all nights, and our brethren throughout the world are with us by the tomb. If one has been to the Holy Land, one has felt something of the electricity, as it were, that still passes through that area. Only a few hours ago, we were still on the foot of Calvary, meditating on what happened there. We have many indications of the utter horror of that scene. Just by chance, I thought of picking this up again and thought about what it actually meant. Can you see it where you are? It is a picture painted not by any human being. What actually happened was something like this. A few years ago, they were renovating a church somewhere in America, and there was a large crucifix up until then as the centre of attention in that house of God. But in the interests of true and perhaps not well understood renewal, they thought they could do better, and they had decided to remove it from the centre of attention and put something more modern in its place. So this was cast aside and put in some corner outside the church, awaiting its eventual destiny. And somebody who was attached to this simple means of devotion in the eyes of some just took one last picture of it as it stood there without any of its precedent glory. And what came out on the negative was what you see. It was a picture painted, as it were, by the finger of God. And what you see is one big wound. Every centimetre is a wound, red with blood, the image of utter horror. Our King cast aside by his own creatures. Now, what happened in this holy night some 2,000 years ago was that that same body, in a way that no one has ever understood, became, from being a corpse without life, in one instant of time, electrified by some force that no one has ever fathomed. And this is what we see on the shroud that covered it. The head is there, but it would be actually that way around. You see, it is coming, it's folding the head there, so it would be there. So you've got the head in the middle, and you've got the back of the head on the other side. And modern means of investigating this in all the latest techniques of photography and analysis have found that this corresponds exactly to that. Every wound is there, and the blood is real blood, just out of a man who has been in atrocious pain, because they are able to detect with modern means that certain liquids of a bile nature come out only under certain extreme conditions. It's all in the Holy Shroud, along with pollen of the age and even a coin in one eye. with an inscription of the time, corresponding exactly. Now, it indicates also the exact nature of the torture, and they have looked at the instrument of flagellation, the whipping, and it corresponds exactly to the space on the wounds going in certain directions. Now, further science has indicated that there was some cosmic explosion of energy at the point at which that corpse came to life, which has left imprinted on this things which they just cannot explain. And there is one instrument in particular which picks up something which no human being could have imagined. It is an instrument which, if it has something underneath it which has this phenomenon, will show it. And this is what it has picked up. There is some form of energy which has been blasted into this at the moment of coming into it, which has left a three-dimensional effect, which comes out perfectly, scientifically, on this instrument, and enables us then to reconstruct that body and that holy face. On this day, which is dawning, something happens in the place where that took place. Actually, it has already happened on Holy Saturday, or to be more precise, because of the difference in calendar, it will happen next Saturday, because in the East they follow the old calendar, which was reformed in the 1500s in the West. So they don't always have the same date for Easter. But because of the geographical situation, it happens in that spot in the case of those who have the main control of that part of the Holy Sepulchre. It is that patriarch who every year goes in at exactly the same time on the Saturday preceding what we're doing now. And there's a reason for that. At midday exactly, on Holy Saturday, he goes in with an unlit candle. And God, century after century, year after year, is faithful to the appointment, and a miraculous light ignites that big Paschal candle. It is the same power which sparked into that body at the resurrection. And that light goes around the Eastern world by midnight. And I think it also comes into a part of the Western world, the miraculous light of the Holy Sepulchre. If one puts oneself in the mindset of those who had been at the tomb, one can see how they were miles and miles and miles away from any thought of anything of the sort happening. And they were almost making fun of those who seemed to be hallucinating when they came with strange reports. It reminds me of what happened to a friend of mine in Wales. He was our teacher of theology in matters dogmatic. It was Dr. Stan, as we used to call him, Stanley John, a good Welshman and a great preacher. And he, like other students for the ministry, did not have to go to the army. He was allowed to carry on studying and be ordained for the ministry. But his brother had to go, and off he went. and left the family on the farm. So Stan carried on with his studies, and one day a telegram arrived from the War Office, and it was, as they all were, very brief and to the point, and it simply said, and the name of the brother was there, missing, presumed dead. And so that was the news that was left on that little country farmstead. Half the family was gone. But there was one tiny spark, presumed. So they hung on to that. But then weeks passed by. Days went into weeks, and weeks went into months. Nothing. And so that last glimmer eventually went. He was not coming back. And there was no more presumption possible. One day, Stan was in his room upstairs studying for some theology exam, and he heard some movement downstairs, and somebody obviously had arrived, and he heard this cry from out of the blue, "My in view! He's alive!" It was the reversal of the first telegram. The same War Office had found him. And it hit me as he told us that story that there was a moment amongst the disciples in which it suddenly brought pimples to their skin and made them realize he is there. My friends, that in the face of reality is all that actually matters. We have access to all our beloved on condition that they're on the right side. Do you see how this Easter makes sense? Yes, but on one condition only, that we submit to that goodwill which suffered one big wound and the utmost torment, so that we also might get there.